Hi folks, welcome to The Financial Argument. With the engineered food shortage approaching this year, many are now facing impoverishment and even worse, starvation. Yes, it's a reality. Although many don't want to hear it, the global food crisis, which appears imminent, comes as a result of some very complex circumstances. Soaring energy prices, insurmountable supply chain crisis, rising raw material prices, factories shutting down production, historically record-high food prices, empty shelves, and major shortages abound. And this is just the beginning. While even the smallest variable is enough to upset the entire economy and our daily lives, what we're seeing are just the first effects of what'll be a chain reaction of circumstances planned for humanity using natural and unnatural methods. Those who contextualize the current and upcoming events as coincidences and use any excuse in the book to justify and explain away the health crisis remain blissfully ignorant about what's to come tomorrow. But I ask you, what are you doing in the face of impending disaster? Are you making sufficient preparations? Or are you still considering everything a coincidence and a conspiracy theory? I realize that I cannot convince everyone, but I'll continue to warn you about what I believe will be the worst crisis in human history while there's still time. And I'll continue to try to shed light on the situation with my analysis, where I present you with the facts. Please watch this video until the end and consider the message I'm giving you. Today I'll discuss what's behind the fertilizer shortage, which follows the record-high price increases that were clearly artificially established. These conditions will result in crop failures, a poor harvest, and a farming crisis in 2022. You may ask, to what extent will this impact our lives? What would you think if I told you that despite the increasing prices and empty shelves you're beginning to see in stores, we're still not feeling the effects of the fertilizer shortage? And when we do, it won't simply be higher costs for agricultural products or temporary shortages as a result of the farming industry's struggles over the last few months. I'd like to address one specific crop, corn, which I believe will experience the greatest decrease in supply and price increases as a result of the fertilizer shortage. Why? Because corn is not just popcorn you eat at the movies or the feed given to animals. Corn is in everything, folks, everything. And corn needs fertilizer. Dozens of products we use on a daily basis contain corn. Shampoo, toothpaste, running shoes, pet food, citric acid, batteries, plastic products, diapers, spark plugs, tires, carpeting, vitamins, even IV solutions are made with corn or corn derivatives. And that's not all. The list goes on and on. Take a look at where you're seated now, and chances are something around you was made using corn. Before I go into greater depth about the fertilizer shortage, you should understand how vital fertilizer is for humanity. If we compare global food security to a body, fertilizer is the heart of this body. By today's estimates, half the world's population is dependent upon nitrogen fertilizers for daily access to food. This means that today, nitrogen fertilizers have saved close to 4 billion people from starvation. Nitrogen-based fertilizers are the most widely used in global agriculture, making up about 3/4 of all commercial fertilizers. The artificial production of nitrogen fertilizers in Germany supported the enormous increase in agricultural production after 1945. Subsequently, crop yields became dependent on nitrogen fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizers are made from ammonia. To supply hydrogen, natural gas or methane must be used. Ammonia is used as a raw material for other nitrogen fertilizers, such as anhydrous ammonium nitrate and urea. Let's assume that everything is going well in terms of agricultural production. You're in a period unaffected by drought or natural disasters, and logistics, transportation, and the supply chain are functioning as expected. In a situation where nitrogen fertilizer shortages occur, average corn yields for the United States are estimated to drop by an average of 40%. Now, when we look at the reality and take the supply chain crisis into account, do you see how this spells disaster for corn, let alone other staple crops? If you know anything about agriculture, you know everything has a time and a place. According to the laws of nature, if you're a farmer and it's planting season, you can't delay buying fertilizer and wait for prices to return to normal. You have two options. Either you buy at the current high prices or you don't plant at all. It doesn't take a mathematician to figure out that if you buy at high prices, you have to sell your product for much higher prices to make a profit. There are also other factors to take into consideration. What we're seeing now is that the price of seed has gone up 7%, fertilizer 43%, and nitrogen's up by $95 more per acre. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Even if a farmer is willing to buy at these high prices, there may be a shortage of fertilizer. Lower yields of crops mean reduced supply, leading to price increases and shortages. In fact, American farmers smelled something fishy going on recently, realizing there was market manipulation. In a letter in December, the Family Farm Action Alliance asked the Department of Justice to investigate the fertilizer prices to determine if fertilizer companies were playing with the market. It's not surprising that there hasn't been any significant development in this regard. Agricultural market experts are rather pessimistic about 2022. Regardless, the increased prices of nitrogen fertilizers will have a major effect on corn this year. Patrick Quaid, R.J. O'Brien and Associates commodities trader, says some farmers may consider changing their crop rotation after taking into account the new costs. An economic analysis conducted by Texas A&M University found that the prices of corn are directly tied to the cost of fertilizer. The data is very clear. Do you see how simple fertilizer shortages can create a dangerous chain reaction that could lead to a farming crisis and throw humanity into a dark time? Let's go back a few months to November 2021. November saw a global energy crisis that drove coal, oil, and natural gas prices to incredible highs. There's since been a five-fold increase in natural gas or methane prices worldwide. In my opinion, this was actually a predictable outcome of the zero-carbon policies. As a result, the global rate of agricultural fertilizer production dropped. The way I see it is this may not be a coincidence because these circumstances seem to be in line with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset Plan. Ammonia-based fertilizers are made from nitrogen, natural gas, or methane. They're used to supplement important agricultural products such as corn, wheat, rice, and even coffee that make up almost 70% of the fertilizers used worldwide. The incredible increase in natural gas prices has had a devastating effect on world fertilizer production, with about 80% of the cost of ammonia fertilizer coming from natural gas. Now, let's go back a little further to August 25, 2021, when Hurricane Ida devastated Louisiana. The world's largest ammonia factory complex, owned by CF Industries, was closed for safety reasons. CF Industries announced on September 22nd that it would close 2 more of its fertilizer plants for 10 days in the UK, citing high natural gas prices. The 2 plants supplied about 2/3 of England's domestic fertilizer demand. The government had to give CF Industries an emergency subsidy for the temporary reopening of one of the 2 factories due to pressure. The combined impact of 3 major shutdowns by the same group has added to the crisis in world fertilizer supply. It's worth noting that some of CF Industries' largest shareholders are Vanguard and the world's largest private investment fund with $10 trillion in assets, BlackRock. The fertilizer crisis continued to escalate. In early October, it was reported by the giant German chemical company BASF that production of ammonia fertilizers in Belgium and Germany stopped indefinitely. Germany's largest ammonia producer, SKW Piesteritz, cut production by 20%. There were further cuts at Arkema in Lithuania and OCI in the Netherlands. Yara International cut its ammonia fertilizer production by 40% in the EU. Fertiberia in Spain has closed a plant together with OPZ in Ukraine, a major fertilizer producer. In Austria, Borealis AG stopped production. The Biden administration's sanctions against the Belarusian government in August and the blacklisting of Belaruskali OAO, the world's 4th largest fertilizer producer, made the situation worse. Belaruskali OAO controls about 1/5 of the world's potassium-based fertilizer market. An additional hit to the growing global fertilizer shortage was Beijing's decision to drastically cut or freeze fertilizer exports for various reasons, including shortages of coal and natural gas for electric power. China is the largest exporter of urea nitrogen fertilizer, accounting for about 1/3 of the global supply, and is also a major producer of phosphates. The US, India, and China are by far the world's largest consumers of nitrogen fertilizers in tons per hectare. China is also one of the largest fertilizer producers and exporters. The Chinese administration announced in September that it's banned the export of nitrogen and phosphate fertilizers until June 2022. I posted a video last year where I told you China is making mass preparations for something big and is stocking up on a surplus of products. It's clear to me that behind the growing global fertilizer shortage crisis is the five-fold boom in methane or natural gas prices. But we must also examine the reason behind it. It appears it may have its origins in the deliberate anti-carbon green policies of the EU's Fit for 55 program, where they plan to reduce CO2 emissions by 55% by 2030. Of course, this includes methane. As a result of these accelerated policies, it was forced to withdraw investment in shale gas and created an unreliable electricity grid for the compulsory expansion of highly subsidized green energy such as wind and solar. Alternative electric power is reduced when the wind is not blowing or the sun is not shining. Storage is also a big problem. This was not a critical issue when solar power or wind power made up a small percentage of the grid. However, today, alternative energies can constitute 42% of gross electricity consumption in energy-dependent countries such as Germany. Oil and gas prices are skyrocketing as nuclear and coal power plants are taxed for their extinction due to the zero-carbon policies. As a result, new investments in hydrocarbon utilization are collapsing and supply is limited when everyone needs it. I uploaded a video about the Great Reset, the Green New Deal, and the related MMT, Modern Monetary Theory, right after the elections. If you've watched this video, you more or less know what I think of these projects, so I won't repeat it. Let's put everything aside and assume that these are great projects for humanity. Does this appear to be a good time to accelerate these projects? In an environment where the health crisis is used as an excuse to explain away every problem, and when we're already grappling with high demand, shortages, and a supply chain crisis, who benefits from making things worse? I'll leave the answer to you. The growing crisis in world fertilizer production fits very well with the World Economic Forum's UN 2030 agenda for sustainable agriculture. With a dramatic decline in meat production, lab-grown meats are replacing animal meat. There's an increasing demonization of agriculture, and especially meat production, with a claim that it's a major source of global warming. Methane is now an important target of the US and EU's green agenda. At the last UN COP26 global warming meeting, nearly 100 countries signed a joint EU-US proposal to reduce their methane emissions by 30% by 2030. Rising fertilizer prices, anti-meat campaigns, and demands for sustainable agriculture are adding to our current rising food costs and food shortages. This is the key to their plan. I realize that YouTube can be a useful platform to turn off the TV and get real news. However, the future of my channel and similar channels that shout the truth and warn people can be unpredictable. That's why your support on Patreon is so important to me and allows me to continue no matter what happens to this channel. Visit my Patreon page to join the great people you see on the screen who keep the financial argument alive and support me in an upcoming economic documentary that reveals the unfiltered truth. On Patreon, you can access extra videos and other added benefits. Your support is deeply appreciated. If circumstances continue on this track, unbelievably exorbitant prices and a famine that will go down in history await us. As I told you before, the plan will not result in just food shortages and famine. Markets will crash, and a transition period after the chaos will be implemented to reset society. In times to come, these will undoubtedly be remembered as the most important events in human history. It's in your hands to get ready while there's still some time left. Although many will complain about the lack of a budget for such preparations, they fail to realize or put in the effort to grow their own produce. For some, it only takes a small fraction of the budget they set aside for new furniture or vacations. Nice things won't save them when reality sets in, so I continue to warn you. Be prepared. God bless you all.